Good morning. This is the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for January 12th. Looking at precipitation over the past 7 days, it's been a wet period, especially for some of our drier southern areas. These darker shades of green indicate anywhere from a half inch to over an inch of rain. Yellow pockets indicate an inch and a half or more of precipitation. Very few dry areas across the geographic area. Precipitation most above normal finally across our southern areas, and still above normal in our wet areas up here in the north. Snowfall has been quite significant in the past 72 hours. You can see areas in blazoned in orange and red indicate anywhere from 8 to as much as 18 or even 24 inches of snow, not only across the higher terrain of the mountains of central Idaho and the Tetons, but also across the Wasatch Chain, even across some of the Ruby Mountains, and getting all the way down towards the Bryan Head area and some not too far from Bryce Zion, some of the higher terrain. So finally getting a little bit of snow cover through there. Our snowpack map has expanded a little bit finally with that fresh snow across the higher terrain of southern Utah, deepening a bit more across the Uintas and parts of the Wasatch, but still below normal. Where we continue with much above normal snowpack is across the Tetons, again in the higher terrain of Idaho, where those purple areas indicate anywhere from 40 to as much as 75 inches of packed snow on the ground. Looking at our satellite imagery, East Coast is blacked out a little bit, but you can see that some moisture moving in a fast northwest flow, but there is high pressure building in across the west coast, pushing the storm track up and over the lower 48 up into British Columbia, and that could set a drying trend for us in the short term. So look at this afternoon, you can see that drier air poking up across California, starting to edge into southwestern Nevada as the high builds in. The moisture in the darker green remains across the Pacific Northwest. Our ventilation index indicating dispersion, nothing too bad, nothing in the purple, but best dispersion areas where we're further away from that high pressure across our eastern areas, or areas in the white and yellow areas of the best overall dispersion. You can see why. We got some transport winds here from the southwest in our eastern areas. Very light transport flow across the western Great Basin. Mixing heights also pretty low across western areas, but getting at least 2,000 to 3,000 feet high here across the east. Now on Saturday, that high pressure amplifies. Drier air moves more into the Great Basin. See a bit more purple in the map here, where dispersion will be quite poor. Very little areas in white anymore, so our dispersion starts taking a downturn as we would expect. Even though transport winds start picking up horizontally out of the southwest, anywhere from about 10 to 20 miles an hour, we do notice that very low vertical mixing under that high across much of Nevada into parts of southern Idaho. On Sunday, the high pressure continues to build across the region. Dispersion continues to remain fairly poor, even downgrade slightly. Again, very poor mixing heights here on the right, starting to push a bit further to the east. Light transport winds 5 to 15 miles per hour from the south-southwest, picking up a little bit more as you get into the mountains of central Idaho. Some of the oranges and purples are winds of 20 to 30 miles per hour, closer to that storm track where there could be some precipitation. For Utah, the clearing index shows similar issues, shows any decent mixing on day one, which is today, taking a downturn into very poor mixing over the weekend. Looking at the 3-day precipitation accumulation, nothing in the Great Basin except just a little tad up into the parts of Idaho and western Wyoming. Further down the road, on Monday, the high pressure is centered over the Great Basin, but there is some moisture starting to undercut it as a deep low pressure area drops down out of the Gulf of Alaska. You see dispersion still fairly poor, areas in red and purple, but starting to pick up a little bit and improve a little bit across the Sierra of California. So that would be expected as the high breaks down and low pressure pushes in. We see as that low pressure finally breaks that high pressure ridge on Tuesday, maybe bringing a swath of moisture to parts of the eastern Great Basin. That area in white indicates where we have very good overall dispersion. As we go into Wednesday, again, dispersion improves. A lot of white and yellow on the map through here. The worst dispersion remains across northern areas, but that's mainly because of the clouds and precipitation as this deep Alaskan storm system approaches the Pacific Northwest. And it has deep enough moisture that by Thursday, across Nevada and into parts of northern Utah and across all of Idaho and western Wyoming, expect to see another round of significant moisture across the area. So we'll see how that all plays out. And precipitation accumulation days 4 through 5. Well, we've got a little bit more precipitation coming in, 1/4 to a 1/2 inch across parts of Idaho and into northern Nevada. Most of the heavier precipitation we saw will be more on days 6 and 7, where some of these 1/2 inch amounts start pushing into our area. Now, the 8 to 14 day outlook, taking us from January 19th through the 25th, indicates cooling developing from west to east. Also, a much above normal precipitation signal in the areas that need it most: central, southern Utah, parts of central Nevada, so even into southern areas. So, a wetter period shaping up for the week of the 19th through the 25th. And this concludes our briefing. Our next briefing will be early next week, none on Monday because of the federal holiday, but coming up again on Wednesday. Have a great day.